The verse of the day is Matthew 7:1-2, and it says, "Do not judge others, and you will not be judged, for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged." Judgment, let's talk about it. Judgment, all of us struggle with this. All of us struggle with judgment. Do not judge. We hear that. We know that, right? It's one thing to read it and to hear it. It's another thing to walk it out. So in order to not judge, you have to be intentional and aware of what your mind is thinking about others when you're in relationship with people or when you're out and about. Taking every thought captive means paying attention to your thoughts on a daily basis. In order to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, you have to know where your mind needs transforming. And I would guarantee most of us need transforming in this area. Judgment. What you judge comes upon you. Today's verse is so good because, in my opinion, it communicated to me the power of Jesus. I saw so clearly as I started to walk with him that what I was judging was coming upon me. And it's easy to be like, okay, when I'm judging someone, I don't think that's coming upon me. But really, how you love others is how you love yourself, is the measure of love you give yourself. So when in the Bible it says the greatest commandment is also to love your neighbor as yourself, the only way you can love your neighbor well without judgment is if you love you well without judgment. And the only way we can love ourselves well without judgment is if we allow God to love us and we tap into God's power that allows us to be loved without judgment. Because his love is unconditional, without judgment. He sees us through a pure lens because he knows if we have his spirit in us, his spirit is going to help us become more like him, so he can trust us to be aware of the parts of us that fall into judgment when they do, so that we can get clean, run to him for freedom, for healing, for a renewed mindset, for more love. Because when we feel judgment, we're just needing more love from God. Sin is just creeping at our door to try to create division and hate. Judgment creates division and is hateful. For example, if you're trying to create new community and you have a group of friends and you're judging them for how they show up for you, I guarantee you're judging yourself for how you show up for them. Or you hold yourself to a certain standard and you're less than if you don't show up for them a certain way, because what you judge comes upon you. So if you don't show up the way that you're judging, you're going to feel that judgment and you're going to feel that shame and condemnation, rather than maybe you just don't have it in you to show up that way one day. Maybe it's just a season of you needing to retract. What you judge literally comes upon you. And this is when God's word, in my opinion, makes so much sense, and why God literally only says things to protect us so that we can stay in freedom, so that we can stay out of pain and trauma and the bad things of the world. God says to not do things literally because he wants us to stay in freedom and in connection with him, in alignment with love. If you want to know where you need more love, check your judgment, because wherever you judge is where you need more love. For you. Whenever I'm judging someone for not doing certain things or not being a certain way, a lot of the times, if I'm honest, I'm probably judging myself for not showing up in that way. Or I'm judging myself for not being fixed in certain ways or whole or healed in certain ways. And so the moment I check me first, it goes back to that verse. Don't focus on the speck in someone else's eye. Don't look at the log in someone else. Don't look at the speck in someone else's eye. Check the log in your eye. It's verse 5 actually in this chapter. It says, "First get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye." When we focus on us, other people's stuff isn't our business. Our business is to make sure our heart is in alignment with love. And if we're feeling judgment or any sort of lack of love, that's just our responsibility now to go to God to fill that void. Because if God has shown me anything this year, my biggest testimony this year has been the ability to stop trying to fix myself when I'm having weak moments or moments where I fall short. And he's shown me, I need you to love you in the midst of your weak moment when you fall short. I need you to give yourself compassion You have two choices, he said. You can either give yourself compassion in a low moment or celebrate yourself in a high moment. Because if you choose to withhold love when you need compassion, or to withhold celebration when it's something to be worth celebrated, then you're going to do that for your neighbor. Then you are going to have a lack of compassion for your neighbor when they fall short, and you're going to have a lack of celebration in moments where they're winning because you're not giving that to you. And it's going to be harder for you to celebrate your neighbor and your friend because you don't give yourself that celebration. And this is why you look at people who are celebrating wins and able to love themselves in the midst of a milestone or a great moment. And if you have that judgment, or you have jealousy creep in, as if it's hard for you to celebrate someone's win, it has less to do about them, and it has more to do with, oh, I need to learn how to celebrate my wins. I need to learn how to stop judging me when I have a win, and celebrate me, and stop judging me when I'm falling short, and give myself compassion. Because when I focus on that in me, that's going to ripple into my neighbor. That's going to ripple into me being able to judge my neighbor less, to stay out of judgment, because you're focusing on you, and you're going to have more love to give because you're receiving more love. So it will overflow into the relationships that you have. Compassion is going to be the thing that disarms judgment, because when we see people through a lens of compassion and through a lens of, okay, all of us are battling our own things, right? All of us have an enemy after us. Excuse me. All of us are battling our own things, right? It's easy to judge when we don't know the full story and we just see people doing things. But we're all battling underlying things. We all have pain and roots and childhood trauma and real lies coming after us, and we function out of pain a lot. And so when we're able to see people through the lens that God does, we're able to have more compassion, because God doesn't see us as our pain. He sees us as the version of us He created us to be, separate from sin. So we're called to do that with our neighbor and the people in our lives as well. No matter how much it irks us or we want to judge, it's not our place to judge, and God can set us free from anything, so He can do that for the people in our lives as well. And when we're judging someone, maybe for posting certain things or doing certain things, a lot of the times people do things from certain motives of needing love. And honestly, if we're judging people for those behaviors, we're just in need of love. We're in need of love, because somehow it makes us feel better to stand in judgment rather than just celebrate everyone and own our part and stay focused on Jesus and what Jesus is doing within us. Because when we keep our eyes on Jesus and what He's doing in us, and where we can become more righteous, the rest doesn't even matter and won't even take real estate in your mind, and shouldn't take real estate in your mind, because we're just called to love. So where can you judge less? Where can you love you more and give more compassion on a daily basis? Okay?